Corrections Advisory Board and the local advisory council. And so for the last 2 years, Judge Spitzer has been, the chair of our board, and Judge McGee. So, we're, so I'm gonna go through kind of the election process. What'll happen first is I'll ask for nominations. Once we get a nomination for that, if there are additional nominations, then we'll add to that and then we'll vote. It doesn't need to, nominations don't need to, there doesn't need to be a motion to close or second a nomination for an officer. And then, once all that's done, I will turn over after the election of the chair. That person will then run the meeting for the election of the vice chair. And then they will proceed to then go ahead and do the rest of the board agenda that we have. And we'll work our way through that. So it's something we just do every year as part of our bylaws. If anybody has any questions about any of that, I'm happy to answer them, but if not, we'll go ahead and begin. And I'll start out by asking for a nomination for the board chair.
Chris,
Yes,
I'll nominate Judge McVicker to be the chair.
okay. We have a nomination for Judge McVicker and Judge Meeks as the chair. Are there any other nominations for the chair? Okay, being none, since we only have one nomination, we don't need to vote. So with that, congratulations to Judge McVicker as he's trying to eat his sandwich, and now he'll have to run the rest of the election. So I'll turn it over to you, sir.
All right.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And I certainly have very large shoes to fill. Thank you, Mark, for your service the last 2 years as the chair of the Community Corrections Advisory Board. And moving on to the next agenda item, the vice chair. Are there nominations who to serve as vice chair?
Yes.
I'll nominate Judge Spitzer to be the vice chair.
Clear that out completely, Judge.
Yeah.
Nope.
Just when I thought it was out.
Do you need a second for that?
No, I just,
You're
if
just doing
there's any
nominations.
other nominations, but
Gotcha.
With no other nominations, then we don't need a vote, and Judge Mark Spitzer will serve as the vice chair. Thank you, Judge Spitzer. Right. Now, the next agenda item is the minutes that have everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes.
Move for acceptance.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. All right, having a second, we'll approve the minutes. The financial reports.
Yes, the financial reports are in your packet. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, we're starting out part of the year and ending from the previous year, so answer any questions that anyone might have about the financial reports. If not, then we need a motion to approve approve the financial reports.
Chairman, I move to approve the financial reports as presented.
I'll second it.
All right, having a second, then we will move on to our next agenda item. Our next meeting is Tuesday, May 19th at noon. That'll be our next meeting. And our first new business item, number 1, is DOC action item, strategic plan, collaboration plan, 2027, grant reports, committee grant approved. And Chris, did you want to address number 1?
Sure. We've, it's in your packet, but it's, part of these are our action items that we need for our grant approval, the strategic plan and the collaboration plan, and then also the approval of our grant. We have sent that out to, for review and any corrections or completions to Judge McVicker and Judge Spitzer and Melissa. And so we have all of that completed now. All that remains is to approve these as a board and action item. And then we'll submit those, to the state before April 1st, which is our deadline. But answer any questions that you might have. In your packet, is the amount of each one of the grants that we're submitting for, the two grants that we're going after, which really hopefully will be renewed, are our community corrections grant, which covers home detention and day reporting, and our grant that covers reentry, and then screening of individuals that are coming back from the department. So those are the two grants. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, there's a face sheet in there that they really make it difficult to submit this for people to be able to see other than the face sheets. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Questions?
Any significant changes from current practices?
Significant changes, Tim, yes. So last year, during the budget year, the state received, actually a big reduction in, the justice reinvestment money, community corrections dollars that were allocated. And so, we're expecting another cut this year. They told us to go ahead and ask for additional dollars, which we did. But at the same time, we recognize that, it's looking like it's gonna be somewhere about 10 to 12 million less for the state. So we're expecting anywhere from an 18 to a 24% cut in grant funding. Luckily, the board and, the leadership that we've had, we have enough, I think, in reserves to carry us through. There's been some discussion with the legislature about, and you might know more about this too, Judge Spitzer, through the Judges Association, but advocating for money so this will be the 2027 grant year of being able to advocate mid-year for funding that might be able to come out through increases, rather than waiting for the calendar year, that they may offer additional dollars during that time. So, our association, and thanks to the Judges Association and many other players at JRAC about the cut in funding. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to share about that, Judge Spitzer, or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason, first of all, they suggested we asked for what we need, even though they were telling us that we're not gonna get it, is to demonstrate the difference between the need and what was awarded, so that then that can be a conversation with the General Assembly. The next legislative session is a budget session, and so all the fiscal stuff is open. And so there's likely to be I mean, we're certainly not the only county that's impacted by the cuts in community corrections funding, and IACAC, as Chris had indicated, which is the Association of Community Corrections in Indiana, is that's their primary legislative agenda for this next session, is to get some of that funding restored. And they've been talking to their partners in terms of how to support that. And Judges Association is very supportive. We've heard from a lot of our judges that we're starting to swing cuts to the community corrections. So would hope that the General Assembly would restore some of that funding in the next legislative session, the budget session. I'll obviously be monitoring it both on behalf of the Judges Association and Grant County, and having appropriate conversations about how much that is a priority. So we'll see where it goes, but it's up in the air, and legislators are aware of the need, and hopefully they will address the need. Yeah. So
It's not met by community corrections, it's met by the regular judicial system, so we're talking incarceration.
well, that's right. If the community corrections is an alternative to incarceration, so that, I mean, the conversation that we have is the kind of penny wise and pound foolish, because it's a lot more expensive to send somebody to DOC. So
since the recent cuts that we've had, DOC sends out a report that they send to JRAC on the numbers. And so since the cuts have happened to us, since the first of the year, there's been 400 more people sent to the Department of Correction statewide than what we're having. Whether there's no, I don't have direct correlation to be able to say that's what it is. But, that's what I think a lot of it is that counties are setting capacities because they can only fund so much. And that means those people that can't be served either end up in the local jails or they end up at the State Department of Corrections.
Both of which are more expensive than community corrections.
Yeah.
Good discussion. Any other questions for Chris or Mark? Do we have any other questions?
I just had one, I guess, and this talks about 8 evidence-based principles for effective interventions, but then you've got a number 9 there. Probably just need to delete that 9 that's in there.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a secret evidence-based principle.
Yeah.
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 You can add your own.
Yeah, you can add your own.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, need a motion to approve the submission of the grant with the strategic plan, collaboration plan as presented.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, having there be a second, then we will, move on to our next agenda item.
We need to vote, right?
Yeah.
No need to vote, sorry, first meeting. So, everyone in favor, please raise your hand and indicate by saying aye. Anybody that is opposed, raise your hand and indicate by saying nay. All right, showing no nays, a unanimous decision, would, move us on to our next agenda item.
And just all the other information items are in your packet. I just want to make sure you had it before we moved on there. Next, the second item is home detention policy revisions. And, so we're gonna kind of tag team this, Melissa and I. I'm gonna start out by talking about, our standard home detention that we have set up now. A couple weeks ago, met with Judge Spitzer, talking about changes that so over the course of the last 5 years, there has been, an intentional move of making changes to the Indiana code as it relates to home detention. If you recall, there were some serious issues that happened in Marion County that resulted in Senate Enrolled Act 9. Senate Enrolled Act 9 ratcheted up the responsibility for individuals that were placed on home detention and were not being supervised appropriately through electronic monitoring. And that resulted in a lot of changes in how things were done. It really increased penalties, but also increased responsibilities for community corrections and probation departments that supervise people electronically through home detention. And since that time, there has been another change to reduce some of those requirements. And rather than take a whole bunch of time, it made some changes that allowed for us to do certain things. And so in order for us to make those changes, so Melissa and I talked with Judge Spitzer because we wanted to review those as much as we could legally to make sure. So for example, 24 hours a day supervision, what does that mean? Okay, so for us, we have field staff and we have individuals that can respond electronically to deal with people who violate those conditions. Does that cover, when we start to look at sex offenders and violent offenders, does that cover that? In talking with Judge Spitzer, he believes that does fit the 24-hour supervision guideline for that. The other one was our response time. And with the changes in legislation that have happened, our response, we have an hour to respond to that situation. If it's a victim and a victim's part of it, we have a time frame to respond to. Again, talking with Judge Spitzer, when we look at violent offenders, there's two situations in code that talk about that. While I'm doing that, just Judge pass these around, that would help. I would have done that in the beginning. But these, what I'm passing around now are the codes in the back, and then the front part of that is the groundwork for the policy changes that we're looking at. Violent offenders and sex offenders, from that part of it, I was having trouble as we differentiated between that code, between charged and convicted. and I know David and we argued about this quite extensively. There was not, until they made the change in 2022 to the code. So once they are no longer charged and they're convicted, so for instance, somebody who's charged with something that's a severe offense and it's reduced down, we were following what they were charged with. Based upon the code and home detention and what we can supervise, we were using charged with no matter what. So if they had been charged with that, we could not supervise. Judge Spitzer, in reviewing that and the changes to the code, is what they're convicted of. So if a charge that fits the violent offender statute comes under there as what they're charged with, but then they're convicted of a lesser offense, they would now be eligible as a non-violent offender on home detention. So we were on the phone maybe hour and a half, thought through these different things. So,
So you and I arguing quite a bit.
yeah. So,
And that wasn't always the case. It wasn't always what you were convicted of.
no,
That seems strange because you can be charged with anything.
right. So in other words, if you were charged with, the way that it was stated before, if you were charged, so once a violent felon, always a violent felon.
That's crazy.
But it's what you're convicted of.
That's the way it should.
Well,
Always.
Now, there is,
Imagine.
what you're charged with has implications for pretrial.
Correct.
Monitoring. But then, once you go through the plea process and you are convicted of, or well, obviously you can also go through the trial process and you're convicted of something and then the rest of it is dismissed that you're not convicted of, then that no longer is relevant for purposes of whether or not you can be supervised.
This is pre-trial, and we haven't gone through the whole process yet, unlike home
Yeah.
detention.
So pre-trial, everything that you've been charged with counts as to whether or not you're a violent offender.
Right.
But post.
Right.
and so what I'm really focusing on right now, Melissa will talk more about the pretrial part of it, but what we're really focusing on right now is just the changes that we're making to standard home detention. So the bench card that you see that's in front of you is a direct result of the review of that statute and then changes that we're making in home detention. The ability to be able to supervise violent offenders and sex offenders on home detention with a cap. And the reason for the cap is what I described to you earlier, is responding to those individuals, to be able to respond quickly to those individuals. If we have a whole bunch of those, we do not have the staff capability to be able to respond that quickly. And I don't think anybody here wants to have a victim who is not notified as quickly as possible if something were to happen. It hasn't happened to us, but what we want to do is make sure it doesn't. So we're gonna look at two things. We're gonna expand we'll look at a capacity for home detention because this is gonna open up more individuals and their eligibility. Looking at a capacity of 100 individuals on home detention, the GPS. And we're looking at, of those 100, 20 of those can be either violent offenders or sex offenders. And again, we will still go through the same qualification process. They have to have the ability to pay fees. They have to have an address that they can be secured at. They have to have all the other qualifications that they need to meet in order for that to be able to happen. And I guess we would call that standard home detention. Yes, Judge.
Does the 100 capacity include pretrial?
That's part two. We're gonna get to part two. All right.
But let me, jump in. So just as a practical matter, how that's gonna work for us, we may have someone who otherwise will qualify, but because of our capacity, we will not be able to put them on because of the cap. And so we can't just kind of order somebody on and say, let's go past the cap because, we're making a decision as a system. This is what our capacity is. Now, obviously, as those spaces open
Right.
up, then someone can come in and fill that. But it's just similar to kind of how we address problem-solving courts as well.
Will we get some sort of a weekly update, like here's our numbers and?
Yeah, I don't, once we reach the cap, then I would send out an email that says what the cap and our next voting date is this date. Now, if we get a violation, somebody gets terminated, somebody gets released early from home detention, certainly we'll let you know. We'll send something out to all the courts to let them know that that's the case. Prosecutor and public defender, chief public defender too, to let them know where we're at.
And you will not be counting in the cap post people who have pled down to something that will not be considered violent anymore in the cap, right?
In the 20.
Excellent.
In the 20, yeah, in the 100.
I mean, you'll still have 100 cap as well, too.
Yeah.
The 20 cap,
Yeah,
someone who had a battery, please do criminal mischief, that will no longer count.
Right, right.
Excellent.
so really you're talking about 20 and 80 is what you're talking about.
What's the current capacity?
Current capacity
Yeah.
right now is going to be.
No, what, I mean, historic capacity that we've been operating at.
70. 70 is what we've been operating at. But most of that has been due to these.
Oh, I understand, but I was just curious as to what,
And I haven't mentioned this, but this is all contingent on us getting the funding that we need in order to fund what we currently have, so that's what my, when I bring this forward, I'm doing it based upon what I know now about our community corrections funding.
Okay, to add to that, complicate things a little bit, Chris, we've asked to be fully funded, knowing that we're likely to be
Yes.
funded similar to, so if we're funded similar to the current funding rather than the full funding, will we still be able to be at the 100?
So Melissa and I talked about that because of where we were setting in project income. Our plan would be to meet what we have out of our current budget with the fees that we have. The problem will
We can't do
recur.
that forever.
Yeah, you can't do that forever.
Yeah.
It's, like anything else, we can do it for a short period of time. But once that does happen, then we've got a choice either as a board of, whether we approach the council or commissioners to maintain capacity.
or increased fees.
Yes, yes. And I will tell you, we have not, Sarah and I talked about it. Ours right now that I know of is the lowest in the state. And part of that has been looking at the population of the people that we have in Grant County and trying to be as open as we can, but we may have to look at increasing, our fees.
Can't
And
we,
there are some that struggle to stay on now with payment fees.
Yeah.
well, I was thinking move to income-based fee rather than a flat fee.
Ours is
It
income
is,
based.
it is. It's,
1 hour's wage for so if they work at CPC and they make $25 an hour, then it's $25 an hour. Our lowest rate is $10.
$100 a day.
Yeah, a day, a day. So we do, but $10 is and Judge is right, we do have people that struggle. Some of the people that we're talking about in that population of the 20 sex offenders and violent offenders, they have consistently difficulty in paying those fees.
How many people do we have that are monitoring the 100 people or the 70 people?
So that,
2.
yeah,
Two.
two right now, and then we have someone who does our high risk, high need day reporting. And she carries 3 of those, that are at the highest of our scale of violent offenders that are on that high risk. She has those 3.
So we have a total of 5.
2, it's 2 probation officers, 1 admin staff,
Okay.
and then a portion of a 3rd probation officer's position includes kind of overflow, some of that.
But our supervision is based upon the number they get, is based upon risk. So when you say, how many that is that we have a lot of high risk people on home detention. Consequently, that means there's a lower number that the case manager has, because there's a lot of work to do when you're working with someone who's high risk. And so that affects, our number. So people will tell me, well, hey, what's the maximum amount they can supervise? Well, it depends on the risk level of the people that they have. So if they were all high risk, in that high risk category, we'd be looking at 25 people, but they're not all high risk based upon our risk assessment. So so I don't know how we want to do this, judges. I don't know how do we want to approve the changes that we have with with this and making the changes with the bench card that you have as it relates to standard home detention, and then talk about pretrial? Or do you wanna lump it all into one and let Melissa talk about that part and then we can decide?
Why don't we vote on this and then?
Can I ask one more question before we vote? Chris, the third, under eligibility criteria, yeah, the defendant has successfully completed a previous Grant County Community Corrections Program. To me, the way that's in there, that implies that they, excuse me, they have to have completed one, and obviously for many people, that won't be true.
No, yeah.
So how is that to be taken? You see what I'm talking about?
What number is it?
It's third from the bottom under eligibility criteria. The defendant has successfully completed a previous Grant County Community Corrections Program. That could be read as to be eligible for home detention, you have had to have completed a community, and I'm sure that's not the intent.
No, that's not the intent whatsoever. I think that counts in their favor if they have successfully completed it, but it does not prevent them from participating.
And since we're voting on potential policy, which I think is fantastic, and I appreciate the work you guys have done on behalf of the defendants, I think this is gonna be great. Maybe that should be reworded just a hair before we.
Well, I tried to, so we try, and we can do that. I tried to put it in a framework so that as judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys, when you're looking at that, you have the ability to say, hey, they have successfully completed as a bench card. So for you, you would say, well, judge, they were very successful in, reentry court. Jamie or Scott might say, hey, they successfully completed, what we had here with probation, and now they're coming into this part of it. But I can,
May I make a suggestion?
yeah,
Because I hate wordsmithing by committee, but I would just suggest maybe, another mitigating factor maybe to be considered is, has the defendant, just put another mitigating factor in decision making, something along those lines. So you keep the language there, but just say, explain what it's there for, another factor in the decision making process, not a limiting factor.
Quick question. Is it correct to take that as this is simply criteria that can make them eligible, but it's not criteria that could get them denied if they don't have it? That's the way I took it. It's up here to make them eligible.
it sort of is that way. We tried to phrase it, I think when we met and we talked online with Judge, it was like, and I think in our jail alternatives meeting, we talked about it too, was that when we start talking about these other facets of it, it's gonna be important that the judges see what are things that are important for them to look at as they make a decision about, should this person come to pretrial? Should this person go to and be sentenced to home detention for executed time? But I got no ownership to it. I just was trying to add things that would help judges and individuals in that process make a decision.
What if we changed it to defendants who have successfully completed a previous Grant County Community Corrections Program may be given favorable consideration?
Okay.
That's good.
I just had that written down too, Judge.
All right,
Same thing.
great minds think alike.
Yes, they do. With that said, I'll make a motion to approve the home detention, home detention eligibility possibility. Criteria, whatever.
Second,
All right, then we'll take a vote. As far as those who vote in favor, please raise your right hand. Indicate by saying aye. Those opposed indicate by raising your hand and indicating nay. Showing no nays, unanimous decision by the board that this is moved forward.
Okay, thank you. And I think now pretrial home detention discussion, which might be a little bit more complicated so since it's complicated and it's hard, I'm gonna let Melissa talk.
So part of the jail overcrowding work group, we've really worked on trying to find a system-wide collaborative response to helping relieve a portion of the jail overcrowding, understanding it's not gonna solve jail overcrowding. We look at multiple ways to address that. And so what this pretrial home detention really is a work of system-wide, players, right? Those with the sheriff, in collaboration with the sheriff, with the judges, public defenders, the prosecutor's office. So we all kind of came together and started talking about, in court services about, what are some possible options to address, jail overcrowding. And, we began talking about the concept of a pretrial home detention, based on, gathering information about, who are we seeing that are getting transported out of the county, and who are we paying for to have beds in, like either Fulton County or Tipton County? And really looking at how do we maybe take, a reallocation of some of that funding to look at something that we can look at locally here. And so, we walked through the process of kind of, creating, a new model of home detention that would focus, primarily on or only on pretrial stage of the process. And so looking at, this is a standalone, program. So it's not a, I want home detention 1 or home detention 2, home detention light versus full-on home detention. This is, once they are sentenced, they would no longer be eligible for pretrial home detention. So it's looking at, the populations that we were seeing within the jail, and looking at who would be some of our, kind of target population. And so we've landed on substance-related, offenses. This would give them the opportunity to seek treatment in the community, while they're, awaiting the rest of their, court process. And then looking at things that sometimes are motivated also by substance use, be theft, fraud, non-support, those kind of things. Looking at, probation violations and what that might hold. Looking at, just multiple, ways of entering into pretrial home detention. So it could be people that maybe don't quite fit the criteria for pretrial release. And so looking at those, or even those who have been on pretrial release or pretrial services and had, maybe a failure to appear, instead of making them sit there, until their case is resolved. It's looking at, is this another, opportunity that we could look at to, kind of filter people into as well. And so really, the whole purpose of this is just thinking about pretrial stage. You don't want to put a lot of, conditions on that supervision, because the more conditions you have, the more violations you have, which would get us right back to where we are now with just more problems. And so it's looking at not releasing people to a lot of conditions. It's a monitoring only. And a lot of encouragement of, here's some services that you could benefit from while you're waiting, which would be incredibly helpful for, defendants in the, going through the court process, right? So, thinking about access to services. So if they're on pretrial home detention, then they have the ability to go seek treatment. It's not a requirement. But those who are in need of services can receive those services in the community.
Will Andrew be available to help them with that?
I'm sorry?
Will Andrew be available to help them with that?
So, yeah, so if it's something that needs, significant intervention, yes. The concept of this would require a probation officer to be kind of the person navigating and doing, kind of those referrals and things like that too as well, just not requirements.
Residential or sober living probably be what
Right.
Andrew would help.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
if we get into residential, that would be something we'll have to kind of develop a second part of the policy for, because they'll be doing,
But you said probation. Is it probation or community corrections?
so, since we're a unified system, it would technically be under community corrections, but because we're a unified system,
Could be
they are
probation.
probation officers.
Because we see a lot of people who are struggling with substance abuse,
Correct.
and it would help them, but it would also help the system and them getting that maybe treatment while it's pending, and then the prosecutor might say, well, these people are serious, and that would help everybody.
So
Yeah,
that,
the thinking is a warm, kind of a warm handoff,
Yeah.
David, so that they'd give them access to the services. We'll let you go to get the services while you're on home detention. In other words, that would be one of the exceptions to your, where you can travel to, yeah.
And the worry, I think, is with that, David, is what we want to avoid is adding conditions. Because what they'll tell you in pretrial, and Judge chairs the pretrial committee, is the more conditions you add, the more opportunity you have for violation. And so that's why we're saying warm handoff, because if you go into conditions and say you're required to do that, now we're faced with violating somebody. That really what we were trying to do is get them to go and get the help, not force
But
them to
you
go
also
and get
give them the
help.
opportunity to not only improve themselves, but to help their situation through plea negotiations and or sentencing.
Absolutely.
And the hope with this, I think, David, is that as clients go through this and start this, if they do well, then they could transition as part of their sentence, maybe, speed that process up to where they could come to regular,
Right.
So
home detention.
part of that question that you had earlier about successfully completed a previous community corrections program would also be, this is one of those programs, right? So it would be a favorable thing for them to successfully complete pretrial home detention. So like that one mentioned reentry court, but this is another layer that if they do well, then they could essentially just move to the full home detention. The idea is, thinking about like the court process, so the courts will establish a 90-day review hearing before they release them. And at that 90-day review hearing, what we will provide is kind of a summary to the courts and saying they've been attending these groups, they've been seeking treatment, or they're not. They're not following the rules very well, so this is a time for them to be able to say and especially for attorneys to encourage their clients to say, it's good for you to get services now, right?
And jump in on one other purpose for the 90-day review hearing is that Greg does not want to pay for people to be on pretrial home detention forever. And so the idea is that if we're putting somebody on pretrial home detention, we're also going to try to fast track those cases as well. And so this gives us we're building in that 90-day hearing. So that gives us something that we can shoot for. And obviously you can resolve cases quicker than that, but.
On that note, should we, in our order of trial, consider these individuals incarcerated? Because I usually put incarcerated at the top of the list.
Yeah,
Or should there be like a middle class of incarcerated, home detention, bonded?
That's a good question.
It will be cheaper.
yeah, it will be cheaper, so maybe we do the incarcerated home detention bonded.
Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe we do that,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. That's a good question.
It's a great question. I think also entering voluntarily, you have a much greater chance of success than if it's court ordered. So I really think
Absolutely.
this is a good idea. Do we know about the numbers? Is there a cap, the cost? Is that,
30 right now is what we're looking at.
it says that in here? I couldn't find that. 30.
No, it's not listed in here yet.
30.
30.
So the idea is, so in addition to kind of monitoring these schedules as people come and go to things like that, you also are monitoring their location, their GPS. And also it'll be working with the jail too, to also identify who's coming next, who are possible. So if you have 30 and, they're all having their hearings, you have to have a way of getting the next round of people in. And so it's not just we're just gonna put people on and not pay attention. It's one of those, we have this group now and we have this group coming. And we've done a little bit of this work with the sheriff's department already when it comes to significant health concerns and things like that to avoid additional costs to the county. And so we've kind of dabbled a little bit in this to help with keeping costs down. And so this is really kind of more formalizing what we're thinking, the concept and things like that. So
I think the cases we're looking at, substance possession and then another substance possession on the, and so at that point, then we've set a much higher bond or keep them in, or substance possession with a probation violation where they're in, or, so level 6, multiple level 6s, it's probably kind of the sweet spot of the types of cases we're looking at for pretrial. Since it's a limited number, That's probably kind of what we're looking at this point.
Yeah, a lot of them aren't gonna be released, for one reason or another. So it could be because of the multiple charges. It could be, it could be probation violations that are
Yeah,
result of
revocation.
new arrest.
Yeah.
And so it's really just kind of looking at where, we're trying to figure out where are people getting kind of caught up and hung up and how do we help with that? Because I think, in the jail meeting, sure, I think you were mentioning that a lot of them have multiple possession charges.
Right.
And so that's gonna, cause some problems, if, we don't look at things a little bit more innovatively to say, how can we address those? And, so research would say the sooner you get, services to the crisis of what's happening, the more likely they are to stay in recovery. And so we're looking at how do we speed up the process to access to services so that they can have a greater chance of success in recovery and long-term recovery. So it's, just another option that we're looking at to build into, to serve people. And we have to remember that these are people in the pretrial stage. So, we can't treat them as if they are, post-sentence, right? And so looking at, having a little bit slightly different approach to that. But, so we wouldn't be doing, intensive case management like they would on regular home detention. We would be doing, encouragement and referrals, and follow-up to those kind of things, but not, conditions to you must. It would be more of it would be a good opportunity for you to seek out those services in the hopes that they would. And then obviously not everybody's going to be successful in a program. No program has 100% success rate. So we have to look at, we might have to do, a court may order a change of placement if they have new arrests, right? Or if we have this chronic and repeated noncompliance with program conditions, we can't have people deciding that they're gonna be on home detention, but just leave. And so on those conditions, there is a learning curve sometimes for people to understand how to schedule things. So it's not like, oh, you went outside and you weren't supposed to, we're gonna do a change of placement. This would be more of a chronic reoccurring. We've tried to have multiple conversations about how to do this appropriately, and you choose not to do that. For the safety of the community, that's when we would be requesting a change of placement as well.
So we're talking of behavior modification. So if that's the case, what percentage, and this would go to the sheriff, do we have that probably could fit that criteria right now with the number of people who are in jail?
Probably around 9%. Contrary to popular belief, our population isn't, the highest portion of our population isn't substance abuse. I know people want to think that we have a bunch of nonviolent, low-level misdemeanor arrests, but our numbers actually show about 34 to 40 people normally, with possession charge being the highest. So that was about 9%, almost 10% of our population. When we first brought this up, and Melissa and her teams have been great at getting all this put together because that's their area of expertise. And we were just trying to figure a way that, hey, they're already in jail waiting for trial. Why not try something? And I know we first brought it up to you guys, we're looking at the standard home detention, which that wouldn't work, but with their help, we were able to figure out a way of doing this. I think this can be successful, but I think what we have to realize is that this isn't the thing that's gonna save the day, right?
I'm glad you said that, because that was the last point I was gonna make, is this is not your solve.
It's part of the puzzle when it comes to lowering our population, because if you look at the Grant County Jail historically, and Judge Spitzer and I had this conversation not too long ago, if you see when our jail population plateaus or actually goes lower, it's because of programs that we've instituted. But not long after that, it goes back up. So population starts to increase again. We'll get some other programs. You'll see it go down a little bit. Short time later, it goes back up. So, if we're viewing this or looking at this as the as a sole answer to our problem, I think we're kidding ourselves because it isn't gonna be. But I think what it does do for us, it does give our inmates an opportunity to better themselves. And I agree with the judge, sometimes when you're doing it on your own, means that you want the help, right? Than just being court ordered. We met with, some inmates at Wabash County in the JCAP program that they're in. There's no time that's cut for them being in it. They've decided to be in it, whether time's gonna get cut or not. What they were telling me, when I visited with them, when they would go to prison and take some of these classes, they were just doing it so I can get time cut off my sentence. So we're hoping that this helps in that. I do have some concerns, obviously, that, we are gonna use part of our budget for, out-of-county inmates. And like I told Greg, President Kitts about when we first discussed this, and he brought that up. I mean, we're willing to do whatever we can to make the program successful. However, that doesn't mean, I may have to go back to the council later on for more money. We can't guarantee what crime's gonna be. One of the sleeping giants in this whole thing is the fact that we do have 1,291 outstanding warrants in Grant County. So if only a small portion of that is served, obviously you'll see our population can increase rapidly. But I do think it's a great program, and Melissa and them's done an outstanding job putting it together. And I think it can help. Even in the long run, I think it's something that we need to probably continue doing. Because I think it's definitely a piece of the puzzle for what we're trying to do.
Speaking of all those warrants we got out there, is there any like incentive you can give to some of these people that are under these warrants to reach out to them? Hey, we got a warrant on you. Come on in here and take care of this, and maybe we can work it out a little easier to save money and time and people coming in jail.
Yeah, we're gonna be going through the warrants again to see which ones are probably super old, right, that we can probably do away with. I think they used to do that periodically. I know Marion does it now with their misdemeanor warrants. They won't, once they expire, they don't, go back for another warrant. I don't think Gas City does that. We're gonna talk to them. So we're gonna look at doing some things like that. But my case, people just look on my case and they'll see that there's a warrant for their arrest. So anymore, when people call us, we used to be very secretive about it. No, we're not allowed to say, but it's out there for the public to know. But that's a good idea. That's something we'll look at doing, and something we talked about doing. And the fact that, too, another sleeping giant is we do have a lot of people in a lot of programs. Grant County doesn't lack programs. I mean, we've done a great job providing resources for our community, and I think we have to remember that we provide a lot. And I mean, I think the last number you guys told me about 1,500 people that take advantage of these programs, and they could be, they're alternatives to jail. So if you look at the big picture of what's going on in Grant County, that's really a pretty big picture of what's really going on when you look at our population, the number of inmates we have in programs, the number of warrants that are out there. So that's something we're gonna have to look at.
What percentage is probation violations?
I'll have to look at that. I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head. I do have the others because I look at them pretty regularly.
But those probation violations, you understand a lot of those could be tied to substance.
And some of them could be, and
Could be.
another thing I can tell you when it comes to probation violation, when we do see new warrants come out, if we have 10 warrants come out, normally 7 to 8 are either probation violation or there's some type of, they violated some type of court, program that they're in. So we don't get a whole bunch of new charges. I mean, we do get some, but the vast majority are a violation of some type of program and things of that nature.
So just from
But-
my experience, I would say 70% of probation violations are based on not going to appointments, probably because of substance abuse, bad screens due to substance abuse. So I believe substance abuse is a huge factor of people in the jail, not just your 30 or 40 new arrests because of possession charges. I think your probation violations, the vast majority of those are gonna be tied to substance.
Well, when I run the numbers, it shows what their charge was, not that it's.
I know,
probation
but it doesn't
violation.
show the probation violation. It shows the probation violation, but it doesn't show why, and I get that. I just think it's important because you made the statement, only 30 or 10%, 30 or 40 people are substance abuse related. I think that's a little misleading because the probation violation, which is probably 40 or 50% of the people in the jail.
Now, those will still be the same people. When I run the
But
numbers,
they're there because of substance abuse, at least a
Right.
good percentage of them are.
Right.
So it's higher than 30 or 40 are in there because of substance abuse.
I guess
That's the point I'm trying to make.
when I ran the numbers February 2nd, I went through, because I got the list from the sheriff, and there were 79 people that were in the jail. And granted, they might have had 3, 4 different possessions, but it was possession. There was 79 people. And then dealing, there was 38 people. So that's almost 120. There was 27 violations, I think probation violations on top of that. And I think there were 23 who didn't register as sex offenders. And so those were the numbers that jumped out at me. And that's going back and looking at what those charges were, trying to investigate it in the latest charges of what they were. And so that's what jumps off the page to me, to try and say, we definitely have a drug problem, and it's what can we do to help these folks to move them
To
along.
add to what you guys just said from listening to you, I just thought about it, thinking about how many thefts we have that's drug related.
Yeah.
People's, a lot of crimes would be substance abuse related, people going out to commit crimes to support their habit.
I mean, I don't think there's any question that the biggest driver of most crimes in Grant County is substance dependency or mental health. So,
Yeah, and that's something else we constantly forget about, some mental health issues, which we do have a lot of problems with. But I definitely think it's a start, to try to correct the issue. But like I said, you just need to look at our history. And I do know, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, but I think even when it comes to probation violations, it's not like they're violating one time and boom, we're automatically violating them. So there has to be multiple violations before they actually request for.
That's true. Unless it's a new charge.
Yeah, unless it's a new charge.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, we do have a problem and we just gotta make sure that we realize that there's just not one answer that's gonna solve our issue. And we just gotta keep working to.
But a lot of those multiple violations are because people are in the middle of an addiction,
Yeah,
missing appointments, bad screens, not going to meetings, that sort of
yeah.
thing.
So a couple of things. So part of the eligibility of, for defendants would be, includes the probation violations for us to be able to look
Right.
at that and say, is this something that we can look at as an alternative? And then also, when you think about, part of your packet, I think included the ICJI report. And so in the ICJI report,
It's not in your copy report, but it's like 120.
yeah, it's really long.
It's attached to your calendar request.
Yeah.
But in there, it has data from the state of Indiana about, successful completion of probation. So the state of Indiana, through, so the end of 24, so the last half of 24, the beginning half of 25, the successful completion rates for Indiana as a whole for probation was 46.7%. So I ran our data locally to see where do we compare with the state of Indiana using the same dates that they used. Grant County has a successful completion rate using that same time of 64%. So we are performing well above the state average. And we have for a long time. And some of that, so when we talk about like technical violations, those would be revocations based on technical violations for missing drug screens, not showing up. It's anything other than a new offense. So all those rule violations. So the same time period for the state of Indiana is at 13.9% for technical violations, revocations. We here locally, same time period, 7%. So we're almost half of what the state is doing. We're doing better. And so we've consistently done that across the board as well. So while we served last year over 2,600 people on probation, on community supervision, so even if a tenth of that were not successful, that'd be his jail, 260 people. So we are well under those state averages and national averages, and we've done that consistently for several years. And I think it's part of it has to do with us thinking outside the box, working together with other agencies to say, what are you seeing? What are we seeing? How do we solve this? As we talk about things like, okay, probation violations, what's going on with those. And so we include those into things here when we make decisions. So just keeping that in mind, it's really interesting when you get those reports, because you know, for me, I want to know how well are we performing in comparison to the other people across the state of Indiana. And so it's good to know, I think for especially, this body to know we're doing well in terms of successful completions. And we're also doing really well in terms of how do we address non-compliant behavior that doesn't result in a violation and a revocation of supervision. Now, they may go into jail for a short period of time, but we're still bringing them back out and saying, okay, let's try something different. So they may do short sanctions in a problem-solving court or intermediate sanctions for community supervision. But rarely is the case that we're saying they're all going. So
And the other thing with that too, is you might add, is that we're also serving, if you look at the state average on risk assessment scores and ours, we're 20% higher. So we're serving a higher risk population and coming out better on those results too.
And this is an important point. I know some members of county leadership went and visited jail in, I think it was Hancock County, is that correct, Greg?
Yeah.
And so we had some discussions after they came back about that, and the point that I made was that, you know, their population is larger than ours, and we're looking at what's an appropriate jail size for, and population is in essence irrelevant from that. And what I look at is felony filings, you know, and compare their felony filings to ours, because it's how many people are actually going to be put in your jail. And so historically, I've been keeping statistics since I went on the bench, and so I was able to get numbers back to 2002, and our felony filings at that time were 699. And last year was around 1,300 felony filings, and it's really felonies that fill the jail up as the sheriff. We get 10 misdemeanors maybe at any given time. So, you know, first to make Chris's point that, you know, sort of the population that we are addressing when we are, and then also to make the sheriff's point that this is one piece of the puzzle, and why we have over time, we've implemented all sorts of different things, but why we've continued to see upward pressure on the jail is that we've had upward pressure on felony filings. So,
Yeah.
So that's the challenge really that we're dealing with, I think, here in Grant County. This is a great opportunity, I think. Greg, you'd be looking for a favorable recommendation from this body because you guys vote tomorrow on this, is that correct? So.
And I think the only thing, just so everybody knows, the budget is around 198,000.
So there's additional resources needed there.
Yes.
That was my question.
That does not come from community corrections. I mean, it would have to come inflow from the county.
Yeah, from the county.
And I have a question, is there a defendant's responsibility financially? Do we give them a grace period, make a requirement gainful employment? Is there some skin in the game requirement that is part of all of this?
So we talked about that in the work group. We didn't settle on, yes, we were doing that. I think, as we develop the policy, you could say something to the effect of, at this point, you know, so we're doing the 90-day, you know, court hearing review. So
Love that.
that could be where we look at, in another 90 days, if you're not, if you're still on pretrial home detention, you will either have to start paying fees or relocate. I mean, but that's a discussion I think we would want to have as a work group to decide when is that point, what do we want to do?
But right now in the budget, we have it in the budget to cover the expenses for their electronic monitoring during the time that they're on. Right
Okay.
now, now that could change, but we just had to make sure that we could cover those 30 people for that amount of, so that's included in the budget, and then the salary for 2 people. One person to monitor individuals as the probation officer that Melissa talked about, and then another for an electronic monitoring surveillance person that is at the computer monitoring where they're at, and recording that information.
Well, I like that idea because I think part of rehabilitation is having them be gainfully employed and then they don't want to lose their job because they're now employed and they don't want to go back to the jail. And I think having some of these incentives, some of these motivations, may assist with recidivism because if you got nothing to lose, then I think that you're more unpredictable than if you have a job and you're reconnecting your community, which I think is really a finer point of this, of these 30 individuals that have this opportunity is that they're gonna be able to go back into the community outside of the jail and hopefully be gainfully employed and hopefully be re-engaged in their families and giving them time and a grace period is also a good way of attacking recidivism.
I think the one thing as a system is that we really should strive to resolve the cases within the 90 days.
That's
I'd
true,
like to
too.
see us, do that as a priority so we can keep those spots open to bring other people on and backfill and, I think that's important.
And these are level sixes, so they really should be getting resolved quicker because your examples are level sixes on top of level sixes or level 6 probation violations. So 90 days should be a good turnaround period to resolve, and that's a good point as
And I don't
well.
think you judges maybe, but I think people like David see it with those is that a lot of them are scared to come on home detention. I know that sounds weird, but for a lot of them, they're worried about, coming on electronic monitoring. I'm gonna be violated. I'm gonna go back to jail. So this also, I think, helps, relieve some of that anxiety that they may have for being able to come on and then, hey, you're gonna have the opportunity to be able to be sentenced that way. And then, they're not as worried. There's not a lot of anxiety that builds up in them about, oh my God, what's gonna happen, with them. And I just see that with a lot of people. And David's talked to me about it before.
Are we looking for a motion? Cause I think we beat this.
Yep, all right.
David, would you agree with?
This
Yeah.
is fantastic. It not only will help jail population, but in theory, it should help recidivism too, greatly, frankly.
All right, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's take a vote. Everyone in favor, raise your hand and indicate by saying aye. Everyone opposed, indicate by raising your hand and indicating nay. There are no nays. Once again, another unanimous motion passed.
Two
Yes,
quick
please.
thoughts. Would be very helpful, I think, to present this to the defense bar. And, hopefully little lights will go off in their heads too. And number two, I'm assuming at some point someone will share this with Judge McLean since he's not here, or maybe he's already involved in it, because he sees almost all the level sixes now.
That's
Excellent.
excellent point. And I'll certainly
Okay.
take all these notes. Brian, Referee McLean and I talk at least once a week. And this will be the number one topic the next time that we get together
And
because
credit times by statute, right?
GPS.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank
Right.
you.
Yep. All right, so we can move on to our next topic, which I believe is the Detention Center Jail Overcrowding Work Group update. It says Commissioner Polling is not here and Sheriff Garcia, who is here.
What was that, sorry? I'm thinking.
Please answer the question.
True.
Are you talking about the jail?
Jail overcrowding.
Oh, okay, we're still overcrowded. I think programs like we talked about previously are gonna help. But I think at some point you still have to talk about more beds. And, I think that conversation is still ongoing. I know the jail committee has met last week, I think it was, to discuss the options that were presented. I think the commissioners now are going to, request from the council to possibly look at option 3 of getting some hard numbers for that. But that's up to the commissioners on what they decide to do, so. I'll answer any questions.
All right, hearing no questions. The next item is Jail Alternatives Work Group, Judge Spitzer, Sheriff Garcia's.
The main report was the pretrial home detention that we've been working on, so we've really kind of addressed that.
And this came out of that group.
It did,
So,
yeah.
So that, I know it's farther up, but We had to put it up there. I was worried David would talk a whole bunch and we'd run out of time, so.
All right.
Good on that one. Jeff.
Pretrial policy team updates, Melissa, Mike, Jess not here.
Yeah, Jess isn't able to be here today. The annual report's been finished, which is a big thing to do at the beginning of the year, so, that'll be sent off if it hasn't already to the state. Kind of gives an overview of what's happened in pretrial over the last year, some accomplishments, some data points and things like that, so,
She and I
we're
were
pretty good.
just reviewing, she sent me the final, and she and I were reviewing it together, so.
And that'll come to us, what, then in May to approve? Okay.
Okay. I would say.
It has to be submitted before then, but, it'll be more of a, here's
Information.
the
Okay.
information, yeah.
Okay.
Probably won't require any action, but
Okay.
just information. The, policy team meeting continues to meet quarterly and kind of continuing to move forward.
All right. And member reports, I don't know that we have a public defender here.
Hey,
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yes, no, absolutely.
Everyone's information, Bruce Elliott stepped down from the chief position. Now Jerry Druck is in the chief position. There's some question on whether Mr. Elliott will be done in June or whether he'll stay on through the end of the year. So I told Mr. Druck, however he does things, he does need to go to the council and get their permission to realign, fill spots, however he's gonna decide to do that. So he's looking at doing that potentially in May when Mr. Elliott makes his final decision for June. But other than that, public defender's office is, I think, fully staffed. And that we are doing what we need to be doing, no complaints. Everybody is, from the county perspective, is taking good care of the public defenders and we appreciate it.
It's a good report. I better look around. I don't think we have any prosecutors here.
Scott, have you what's on
I
it?
believe Radiant Health.
Sure. So for those that don't know me on the committee, I am Stacy Losi. I'm the new president and CEO at Radiant Health. A couple things to be aware of. We continue to expand our crisis service line. Our inpatient is winding down and closing. It will be officially closed at the end of the month. We're continuing to see increased volume through our crisis. So far this year, we have served 260 unique individuals with over 1,400 services. We have some repeat customers that keep coming back. So that's one piece. Our addiction team has expanded by 2 staff. We are looking for 2 additional staff. So far, through January of 26, we have provided over 6,000 services. 414 of those were in the jail setting. And there's 686 unique individuals we're serving so far this year.
We appreciate your partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marion Health Task Force.
I don't think she's here.
Okay, all right. And, I've said this a lot, Grant County Sheriff, I know Sheriff Garcia.
No, I've spoken enough.
All right. Marion Police Department,
Chief's not here.
Grant County Court Services, Community Corrections and Probation.
I know I've talked enough. I don't know.
All right, we covered a lot of territory.
Got a lot going on.
Grant County Commissioners. We do have somebody from the council though, Mr. Kitts.
Yeah, I went ahead and put on the agenda just kind of a jail discussion to really get a feel for, where the council is. It's kind of one of those situations where I feel like we're gonna be drawing up sides, basically. And it could go either way on a vote for something. I know I expressed in the jail committee, I would prefer that we had 10 people, commissioners and council that all said, yep, we all agree, this is what we need to do, and maybe the sheriff and the judiciary as well, maybe even prosecutor. I mean, just everybody on the same page, but I almost feel like it's just split. And it's kind of hard to make a $74 million decision, or including interest, $130 million decision on such a split. I'd rather see us somehow all come to the same page, and I'm certainly open to any suggestions of what anybody might have. The main thing is that whichever side of the issue you're on, I just want everybody to be open to communicating and discussing those options and trying to do it without emotion and hoping the same would happen tomorrow night. So I'll make an announcement because, you know, if things are out of order or people get too excited, then obviously we have to ask that person to leave or we just have to shut down the conversation. But I think we can all have a rational discussion and agree to disagree if that's it. I mean, because that's what can certainly happen anywhere, so.
That's good. It's very good. Grant County judges, Judge Spitzer?
No, we got much to add that I can think of that we haven't talked about at this point, so, you know, obviously just kind of looking at some changes in the future and how we, you know, kind of, prepare for and appropriately address those changes for the future so that we can kind of keep the momentum going with what we're doing, so.
Well, a little update with our referee court. We resolved, as Mr. Blickfield knows, over 50 cases by way of plea last week, which is an amazing amount of cases to resolve in 3 days. And so referee court is resolving a lot of cases. And we're hoping to see those resolution of cases result in jail numbers. But as the sheriff correctly pointed out, I don't know that there's a silver bullet. It's just pieces of a puzzle that we're all trying to put together to make sure that we can assist and hopefully solve jail overcrowding. But I do know that our referee court is very, very busy, and to have 50 cases resolved, it was over 50 cases by way of plea. That's an amazing thing for 1 week. Now we get about 30 plus filings, felony filings, misdemeanor OWI filings a week. So, you know, we're getting almost as many in as we're getting out, but,
And their goal is to close more cases that are filed each week.
last week we did that.
That's the goal of everyone in there.
Yeah.
And I think it's happening, so.
And then when referee McLean is in session resolving 50 plus cases by way of plea, you know, our court's been in trial, our court's maintained its own docket, and so we're able to kind of use both courtrooms functioning all at the same time, which is, if that wasn't the case, we would have to delay all those 50 some pleas that we just did and push them to when we weren't in trial, and so I think that we're starting to see some real traction, but it's also because of attorneys like David Glickfield, and we've got a team of prosecutors. I talked to prosecutor Cameron Wilson, who's doing a great job of resolving matters with innovative ways to think through how we utilize informed probation, or to take a look at warrants that are old or cases that need to be dismissed or they can't be proven by the state. And I think he's doing a really, really good job of taking a look at evaluating cases in ways that may not have been done before. And I wish Scott was here because I need to tell him that. So I've seen a lot of progress with the staff that we've had. That's all I have. Is there anything further for the good of the order before I take a motion to adjourn? I know we've gone a little bit over time.
I think Chris referenced it, attached to the calendar invite was the ICJI report, so that's Criminal Justice Institute, and that's kind of a picture for the state. So it's long, but it's interesting and it's very well done, and so if you're curious about about what things look like from the state perspective, it's a really good resource. What was notable to me was the kind of what we're doing with regards to our probation operations and how we address violations and things like that. The state is not doing as well with that. And so, actually the state JRAC has talked about maybe using the information from this report and then targeting some ways that we can, because I think a lot of people are going to the DOC that don't need to, if they handled their, supervision a little bit more like Grant County handled their supervision. So, anyway, just informational, but you might find it interesting. That's all I have.
All right, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right, motion carries, we're adjourned.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing about being retired. I forgot, I forgot from how many times I did.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they'd been there about 5 minutes.
We gotta be knocked out.